Good afternoon. My name is Georg Martin. I'm a professor in marine biology at the Estonian Marine Institute. I'm going to give a talk about nature conservation at sea. We'll be talking about MPAs as a tool, as an instrument to achieve conservation and environmental targets. So recent assessments all over the sea area of Europe has shown that the biological diversity is not having a good state. This figure shows a result of BEAT plus tool application on the whole marine area of Europe. And it shows, taking into account the different aspects and indicators of status of biodiversity, it gives a result in the classification in 5 classes. So you can see that most of the sea areas around Europe do not have a high or good biodiversity status, rather poor. And if we look at the Baltic Sea case, so here we again see that most of the Baltic Sea has like a poor or even bad condition. So actually the situation is not so good. So if we look into the existing legislation and instruments we have for the protection of marine environment, we are at the moment in Europe, we have different directives which are working towards sustainability in human actions and status of environment in the marine areas. So if we look at the time scale that Natura 2000 process and common fisheries policy have been working for several decades already. In that sense, starting from 2008, we have Marine Strategy Framework Directive, and all those big instruments have aim to keep our marine environment in the conditions that we can actually use the goods and services and preserve the status on a reasonably good level for our future generations. So we can think that the situation must be good, but actually different reviews show that actually this is not the case. Here, for example, to comply with MSFD and habitat directives, countries can and they are adopting laws and restrictions, for example, for their own fishery not to take place in the marine reserves. But at the same time, we have common fisheries policy, which actually allows member state countries to fish in the waters of other states. So, and in that case, these restrictions doesn't work. And this is not the only problem with this different legislations. We have other cases also. So what is marine protected area? Marine protected area is an instrument to restrict the economic or other use in a sea area with certain goal or aim. So the first MPAs were established as a resource protected areas, so restricting mostly fisheries. But at the moment we have MPAs can be very different. So they can have a target to conserve economic resources, biodiversity conservation, some species protection, and some others also. And there are very different types and different legislation in different countries which actually work handle these MPAs. There are of course agreed guidelines internationally to have the kind of a standard for this MPA management, but still, yeah, this MPA management is usually very country specific, and it's tied to the local legislation. So for the Baltic Sea area, the project was carried out to analyze how effectively our marine protected areas actually are managed. And the project team was, we were 4 people from Klaipeda University, Helcom Secretariat, from Marcus University and Tartu University. And this work was carried out in action project led by Helcom. And now I'm going to present you some of the results of what we have actually found. So in the Baltic Sea, we have a quite extensive network of marine protected areas. According to EEA Natura 2000 database, we have like close to 900 Natura 2000 sites. And out of them, close to 700 have approved management plans. Helcom MPA database has a little bit less category, less areas listed, and among them 176 are having proper management plans. So if we look how they are organized, we can see that this Baltic Sea Natura 2000 sites are, out of them, like 68% are having like a marine part is between half and full marine areas. So 5% are totally purely marine areas, and 27% are which having marine area less than 50%. So if we look how the coverage of Natura 2000 habitat types, so we see that most of them include reefs, shallow inlets and bays, and coastal lagoons are the habitat types covered by those areas. And also the share of sandbanks and mudflats and estuaries is somewhat a little bit smaller. So, and if we look how many or what is the share of those areas are covered by approved management plans, then we see that the best are the mudflats and sandflats, which are covered up to 96% of areas they have management plans, and the less smallest share is by coverage by management plans is for estuaries. So what is the, if we look at the effectiveness in the nature conservation, so this is effectiveness is actually mentioned in many different documents. Here are 2 examples, like CBD target 1.1. So lists specifically that at least 10% of each of the ecological regions have to be effectively conserved. So it's important here, this word effectively conserved. Also CBD target 11 from Strategic Plan for Biodiversity 2011-2020 says that again, so to achieve conservation of at least 10% of coastal and marine areas, and these areas should be of particular importance for biodiversity and ecosystem services, ecologically representative and well connected, and also effectively and equitably managed. So again, this our aim is not just to protect some areas or some features, but we have to do it effectively. So what is management effectiveness? Actually, this is to say in a very few words, it's how well protected areas are protecting the values we are like put up the goals and the objectives. And there are 3 main topics in this evaluation, and these are design and planning, adequacy, and delivery of objectives. So that means that how well actually this can we see this management or protection actually in any status indicator we can measure or see. So according to IUCN, this management of protected area is a very cyclical process. So there are different parts of the cycle, like design and planning. And we have this adequacy and appropriateness and delivery. And actually, you can measure the effectiveness should be measured and assessed in each of these components of this cycle. So, and usually this is done by questionnaires using biological, environmental, socio-economic, and governance criteria. And yeah, so methodologically it can be done in different ways. For example, scoring different answers and the effectiveness, and finally the quantitative or qualitative and descriptive scoring systems can be used. So for Mediterranean area, there is also exists example of how this management effectiveness is assessed there, and the list of criteria includes, for example, existence of legislation on MPAs, existence of functional management body, existence of an updated management plan, financial resources, ability to enforce seawater quality, and management of fishing effort, and other things like management of visitors, for example. So these are all different criteria which can be used in the assessment of management effectiveness of the MPAs. For the Baltic Sea, we developed also a similar system, which actually includes is based on this cyclic management cycle, and we were looking into different criteria. Criteria one is there a management plan, management measure addressing relevant human activity? So that looking to that. Criteria two is looking for is this management measure implemented? Criteria three, looking into is this management measure enforced? And criteria four is actually, do you have effect of those? So can you see what the actual result in the nature? So our methodology actually covering 1, 2, 3 criteria. This fourth criteria was we were not able to test it or include it in this first pilot project because of data deficiency actually. But we tested others. So we developed a questionnaire, and it was structured in a way that our method is designed to score how well human activities that generate pressures to important conservation features are managed. So and we have like the questionnaire with conservation objectives and different human activities. And so this questionnaire was distributed among managers, and they were asked to categorize each of those relations between conservation objective and human activity. Like here you can see on this table marine aquaculture, agriculture, forestry, and so on and so on. So the list is long. And the categories are, the answer, the category one was given that if human activity is not addressed by management measure in that particular area. Category two was given if the human activity is addressed by management measure, but not legally implemented. So you don't have administrative action to deal with that issue. Category three is addressed is given when you have it's addressed by management measure, legally implemented using administrative instruments. And category four is given that it's is addressed by management measure, legally implemented and enforced. So you had 4 categories possibly to give for each of the relations between human activity and conservation objective. And the conservation objectives, we have habitats and some important species. So for this analysis, we subsampled all the Baltic Sea protected areas. So the total number is too big, so it was not possible to collect the data for all of them. And we did pre-sampling. So that means that we just looked into proportion of the distribution among the countries, location along the Baltic Sea, latitude, longitudinal gradient, and proportion of the marine part of the total MPA. So we wanted to have like a more or less equal distribution among those. And so Finally, we selected some marine protected areas from Sweden 114, from Denmark 40, from Finland 18, from Germany 14, from Estonia 12 marine protected areas. And this questionnaire was sent to those managers of those areas, and we asked them to provide the information along with quite simple questionnaire. So conservation features, as I said, were habitat directive habitats and species. And species, not all species, but we looked for those for overlapping from Habitat of Birds Directive and from HELCOM Red List. And finally, we came up with nine species which actually were looked to be most important. So a list of human activities was adopted from HELCOM Zone platform. So altogether, 26 human activities were grouped into 11 major groups, and we were asking like managers of information to rate those activities. Here is another list or the continuation of the list here. So and that's how this online questionnaire looked like. So managers were sent the link and asked them to actually categorize those interrelations. So some results, yeah, we were quite optimistic of distributing doing the pre-selection of the areas. Unfortunately, we didn't manage to get any answer from Sweden, but we got the answers from Denmark, Finland, Germany, and Estonia. So totally, we had finally a data set covering 4 countries and including around 70 areas. So yeah, so if we look among those 70, what we got, so 40 of them were having sandbanks in them, 42 coastal lagoons, and large shallow inlets and bays and reefs were also quite popular. And estuaries and submarine structures made by leaking gases were kind of less represented. So, but anyway, the habitats were quite okay. So we had a quite good representation of like at least 5 of Habitat Directive marine habitat types. But with species, we had less success because answers were the only species which actually we had more answers was harbor porpoise. But for all other species, the answers we received were not so numerous. So it was actually quite difficult to make a very big good statistics out of this information. So this is these are some results. So actually, out of the questionnaires, we had on this figure, you can see that how many different habitat types were present in one single MPA. So we can see that in 20 for those those MPAs which included only one of listed habitat types. There was only 20% of these answers. So 29% of answers had at least two habitat types, then 15 3, and quarter of those had 5, and only like 2% we had covering all or presence of all 6 listed habitat types. So according to proportion of marine area, we actually had also different coverage also by countries and by representation. So most of the responses covered MPAs in the limit of 50% to 100% marine area. So most of the responses were the biggest number of areas were coming from Denmark. Estonia and Finland did not report on MPAs having 100% of marine area. So probably there was some, yeah. So that's a case in this answers. So according to management status and management categories, so fully managed MPAs, so that means that everything was graded at least 4 for all conservation features. There was only 1 MPA out of 17. So partly managed, that means that management categories less than 4 for any of present conservation features. So most of the present MPAs were in this group, and not managed MPAs, which actually had only category 1 for all answers. There were 4 MPAs of this way. So what were the most distributed human activities across MPAs? So actually you can see here from this graph that for example, transmission of electricity and restructuring of seabed morphology, these were highest relevance. So they were found in the biggest proportion of the MPAs. High degree of relevance also was for marine aquaculture, extraction of minerals, renewable energy generation, and relatively low relevance was pelagic fishing and agriculture. So this was quite interesting result of our study, that actually all human activities are predominantly managed by other instruments than actually management plans of the MPAs. So this was kind of surprising, but this is a situation, and probably this is an overall situation in the Baltic Sea. That means that most of the known human activities are managed not by MPAs themselves, but by like general management instruments, like national implementation of different directives, Marine Strategy Directive, Water Framework Directive, other instruments. So only in some cases, like here we can see this fishery towed bottom gear. We found that okay, the most of the cases it was listed, it was managed by particularly the management plan of the area. So, yep. So if to look into differences, national differences. So there were, of course. So here we can see that for those 4 countries, Danish, German, Estonian, Finnish MPAs, completely or almost completely managed human activities category 4 were, for example, industrial plants, military activities, coastal defense, oil and gas extraction. So less efficient managed activities were shipping, forestry, tourist activities, towed bottom gear, fishery. And here on this graph, actually, you can see that. So it's the industrial plants is the best managed, and actually, for example, research activity has like mostly, for example, category 3 in all cases we had. So management of human activities versus proportion of marine areas. So here were some obvious trends. So first thing is that in all types of MPAs, category 4 is the most numerous case, which is actually good. Then number of relevant human activities is lower in fully marine MPAs, but they are better managed. So that's also quite logic. And number of unmanaged activities is highest is nearshore sites. So that's quite logic, because in the nearshore sites you have a bigger number of different human activities, and the pressures and the activities are more diverse, and management of those is more difficult. So if to look into this management effectiveness of human activities for different habitats types, so the best, I would say, for all habitat types, category 4, or mostly category 4, is found for this kind of human activities like industrial use of oil and gas, coastal defense, transport, infrastructure, transmission of electricity, and extraction of minerals, and this kind of things. So between management extent, the difference between habitats for example, for renewable energy, transmission of electricity and communication, for example, cable line, and full management category 4 for few habitat types. So that's only for some of them, are for example, for hunting, marine plant harvesting, tourism and leisure activity. So you can see there is a difference in different human activities, how they are managed for different habitat types. So here are some like, how to say, a little bit contradicting results came out of this questionnaire. That, for example, we have a well-managed tourism infrastructure. 80% of MPAs have category 4 for that, but not tourism activity, which like itself, only 20% of MPAs have the category that. So, and the similar kind of things looks like here, that we have well-managed transport infrastructure. So 93% of MPAs have category 4, but not transport activity itself. Only 4% of that of MPAs have management category 4. And 84% have category 1, which means that it's not managed at all. So overall management effectiveness of different habitat types, irrespective of human activity. So it's like all together. So we can say that bubbling reefs are the best managed habitat type in the Baltic, and large shallow inlets have the highest proportion of MPAs with unmanaged human activities. And 1/3 of protected estuaries are not managed at all or partly managed. So if we look at different habitat types in MPAs with different proportion of marine areas, so we can see that this here is example sandbanks and reefs that generally well managed, except fisheries. And the larger is a marine area close to land, the less human activities and better management. And nearshore sandbanks and reefs are very similar in the management extent. So conclusions on method for management effectiveness assessment. So at first, this method provides good interpretable results. Method is more suitable for management effectiveness analysis of the network than single MPAs. Yeah, that would be taken into account in future development of this methodology. Method does not prioritize human activities and conservation features. So this, in the case where when it is needed, this part should be added to the methodology in the future. And there might be a possible errors to the different interpretation of the questionnaire statements. So we actually had this experience that in many cases, in some cases, not in many, but in some cases, those who were answering the questionnaire needed some additional explanation what was needed, and then these categories will be changed. But still, this can be solved by better guidance. So, and some conclusions on this management effectiveness assessment results itself. So, majority of human activities are well managed. So, in the Baltic Sea, most of human activities are managed by other instruments and management plans. This was, as I said, quite kind of unexpected result of this work, but it seems to be correct. 3/4 of human activities are relevant to more than half of analyzed MPAs. So number of relevant human activities is lower in fully marine MPAs, but they are better managed. So fishery and shipping are worst managed activities in MPAs in the Baltic. So infrastructures are better managed compared to activities, and habitat types, large shallow inlets and bays and estuaries are least managed habitat types in the Baltic MPAs. So that was all. Thank you very much. We are going to publish this report in a scientific paper. The manuscript is ready at the moment. And there is now the project application to apply this methodology wider for the whole Baltic Sea MPA network. So, and this hopefully will be done in coming couple of years, and then we can present the results on some next workshop. So thank you very much.